let's get into the big topic of open source, something that we actually say at Red Hat.
This is so awesome.
We are an open culture that believes
actually
in employee
what is
that process that a developer, or let's say
as the Kubernetes ecosystem really boomed.
And we are live. Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of GitOps Guide to the Galaxy. It's a very special episode today. I'm very excited, very happy to introduce our co-captain. We finally get a co-captain. So Hillary, I'll wait. You are on this side of me. Hillary, I'll let you introduce yourself. Tell everyone who you are, what you do at Red Hat, background, all that fun stuff. I'm pretty sure we'll talk about your shelf as well.
Oh yeah, my shelf, right? Everybody likes my shelf. So hey guys, gals and undecided. My name is Hillary Lipsig. I am a principal site reliability engineer and global team lead for one of the managed services teams running on OpenShift dedicated. So if you've heard of our offerings of managed Kafka or Red Hat Open API Manager, those types of things, that is the team that I am leader of. Let me see, I've been at Red Hat for about, I don't know, year and a half now-ish. And actually prior to being an SRE here, I was a quality engineer for 10, forever. 11 years, something like that. I like to say that I dedicate my life to writing software that impersonates people, basically. That's what I do.
I think it's a very, very apt description.
More or less. God, yeah. So that's really it. And my time outside of Red Hat, it's still technically part of Red Hat. You can find me at the WIT Network, where I run a community of that nonprofit for women in software engineering. And we're actually kicking off this month. We're kicking off our Coding Coach Coffee Hour, which is specifically an effort designed to help particularly women, but anybody do well on code tests and get past the code test, and just in general upskill as engineers.
Yeah, I actually just dropped the link into the chat. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the WIT network, it's all the cool things and everything that Hillary just described. Probably more in detail in the link than I can than we can spend the hour on. So please check that out. It's really cool. And I'm very excited. I'm very excited to have actually someone on who actually does things, right? So a lot of us at Red Hat, a lot of people that I bring on, solution architects, people here in the BU, we work a lot on theory. So I was really excited to bring on actual SRE onto the show and be part of the permanent hosting here. So we finally have a co-captain here at GitOps Guide to the Galaxy. I've worked with Hillary in the past. She's more technical than I am, I guess, if that's even possible now. I guess now being in the BU is they say that's where all engineers go to die, I guess, is in the BU. So being there I'm very excited to have someone who does this from day to day. So cool. So welcome Hillary. Welcome. So if you guys have any questions, again, feel free to drop it in the chat. We'll be happy to talk about it here. So I'm excited for our guest today. We were kind of decided when should we bring you on? Now, we actually made a decision a while ago about who the permanent co-host is, and Hillary's like, I want to jump on this show because we're talking about SLOs and SLIs, and that's your jam, right? That's is what you love doing. So our guest today, they've been kind of hanging out in the green room, so we'll bring them on. So if Stephanie, the producer, can bring them on, is from Dynatrace, right? So talking about. So I used to pronounce it Keptn, right? So trying to pronounce it the German way, but Andreas told me it was it's actually Captain. So talking about Captain, so Andreas, or Andy, I guess, Oleg, I'll let you guys introduce yourself. Who you are, what you're working on, what you do, all that cool stuff.
Yeah. Oleg, shall I go first, or do you want to go first?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, well, thanks first of all for having us on the show. Thanks, Hillary, for doing the great work that you do in your WIT network. And yeah, what do? I feel a little connected with you, Hillary, now knowing that you have worked in quality for about 10 years. I think my screen just went black and now it came back. Hopefully I'm still
Yes.
all with you.
Yeah, no, we can
Perfect.
see you. Yeah.
Perfect. Because Hillary, my background is also in software quality. I started my career. Yes, quality.
That's right.
Because who needs software that doesn't work well? So this is why
Right.
quality is very important. You know what the fun thing is? I started my career as a software tester on a testing product. So I did performance testing on a performance testing tool. Back then, it was called Silk Performer. It was when I started, the company was called Segway. It then got acquired by Borland and then became Micro Focus. And I think now it's part of, I don't know. But I was a performance tester on a testing tool. I did that for 8 years. And then 14 years ago, almost to the day, I started with Dynatrace. And there, I'm kind of now I call myself a DevRel or an evangelist or whatever you want to call me, and try to help people understand what we can do with the data that observability gives us, especially as we are using it to drive automation around delivery, so making decisions on whether the quality is right based on metrics to push stuff from dev all the way into prod, and then use data to make better informed and automated decisions to bring systems back to a healthy state to keep systems reliable. That's kind of what I mean. Yeah. That's what I mean.
It's like what haven't you done?
No, it's just I think it's a very small thing, but I've done this consistently for a long time.
Yeah.
But I don't know a lot of things that I should know, but I'm happy that I know what I do know.
Awesome. Oleg, so go ahead and give your quick introduction or
So happy
as long
to
as you
join
like.
the test guild. Actually, my background, I also started from quality assurance, but quality assurance in hardware and embedded systems. So first
Wow.
5 years of my career were rather about testing devices. Then I started more hardware development, well, mostly digital hardware. I have a PhD in hardware design. For what it was, but when you do quality assurance, you need automation, hence you need tools. So at some point I started using Hudson, Jenkins, and at some point, if you fix something with CI, you become a CI guy. So this is exactly what happened to me. So I started maintaining Hudson, then Jenkins. I started contributing to open source. Somehow ended up in Jenkins core team. So if you use the Jenkins in the last decade, probably you have seen my name on Jira or on GitHub. And starting from 2019, I started following Keptn because it's a really nice project. It has been exciting to follow it. And this summer I started contributing a bit. And finally, I joined Dynatrace to help with building a community around Keptn. So now my job is rather community management and whatever is related. I call myself wannabe Captain Obvious, and this is a part of my job these days.
Awesome. You know what's really cool is that we now have like talking about like QA. We have like QA from like front end engineering all the way to like embedded systems. So like if you guys, so if those of you watching, if you really have questions about testing almost anything, I think this is the stream to do it in. So yeah. So speaking of Keptn, so what's interesting is that when I first thought about bringing, when I first heard of Keptn, I thought about like this, I want to bring someone on to talk about Keptn. And then, I jumped on a call with Andreas and Oleg, and it was completely different from what I thought it was. Right. And so, they kind of give me a good education and good background on it. So I think maybe we should just start there, right? Like let's talk about what Keptn is, and let's start the exploring process there. So I think I'll hand it off to you guys, Andy and Oleg, to talk about, first of all, what is Keptn?
Yeah. Is it okay if I quickly share my screen?
Let's do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's do it. Okay. Let me figure this out. Screen number 2. I'll move this out of the way because you know how you look like.
Yes.
I'm just I'm just using 1 or 2 slides. I'm very fortunate to be able to travel again. I mean, keeping fingers crossed that on Sunday I get on the plane to North Carolina because I will be speaking at DevOps Days in Raleigh next week. And I think I want to just use maybe the intro slides because also there's 3 things I do in my talk. What is Keptn? Why we built Keptn? I think that's also an important piece because why yet another tool? Maybe you think there's already a solution out there. And then how Keptn works. I really just want to get the first question addressed. What is Keptn? And with a segue also into the whole topic of SLIs and SLOs. So you're the first ones now to actually see this deck.
We're getting a preview. Awesome.
Exactly, but don't tell anybody.
Sneak preview, all right.
Yeah. So what is Keptn? In a nutshell, Keptn enables you to do, on the one side, multi-stage delivery. Keptn itself is an event-driven orchestrator of what we call sequences of tasks. The first use case is for, we call them, I think, the DevOps engineers that are reliable or responsible for pushing artifacts through a pipeline multi-stage where Keptn can orchestrate tasks like deploy, test, validate, and then release into the next stage. But Keptn is not just yet another tool that can push stuff through a delivery pipeline, because the second use case is around orchestrating day 1 and day 2 operations. And for the way I define it, this is everything to make sure that you can successfully release your canaries. So making sure that the systems, the canaries get scaled out if it's good or scaled back, but also when there's a problem in production, it can automate the orchestration on, let's say, fixing a problem. So it's assessing the situation and then is triggering based on the problem that has been identified, is then triggering the right actions. And always validate if the action brought the system back to a healthy state. Hopefully that's it. It can go through multiple iterations and eventually if it solves it, good. If not, it can escalate. Now, the key magic piece here, and this is, I think, one of the interesting topics we want to talk about today, is that embedded and kind of baked in at the core of every sequence it orchestrates, Keptn makes data-driven decisions based on SLOs, service level objectives. And we'll go into more detail on how we treat SLOs and how we define it, because I think there's a lot of people that talk about SLOs and everybody has a little different understanding of it. So we'll show you how we do it. Most important thing is that the data obviously comes from your observability platform of choice. The first integrations we have built is, obviously, we're a CNCF project, so Prometheus was the first integration. Then we built a Dynatrace integration because most of us contributors are from Dynatrace. We already have a Datadog integration that one of our community members built. And there's more out there integrations that people have asked for. Now, on top of this is all of the tools that actually do then the individual job, because Keptn itself doesn't deploy, it doesn't test, it doesn't roll back, it doesn't scale, it doesn't notify. It really orchestrates all of these tools, and it does it through an open event standard. What that means is we're really taking away the pain for you to have to write lengthy automation scripts that call the tool for deploy, then validate if the deployment happens successfully, then call test, validate if test was successful, then reach out to your observability platform and figure out your SLI and SLO status, and then do the next thing. So we take care of the whole orchestration. We're using an open event standard that also Oleg especially is driving through the CDF Foundation, the Continuous Delivery Foundation. So we standardize on a way we communicate with these tools. And at the core, after every task, Keptn makes an informed data-driven decision to figure out in which direction the process should move. So this is kind of Keptn in one slide. But I think this is important to understand kind of what the use cases are. And before I kind of open it up, one key point, and I think this will help us drive the conversation around SLOs. What really happens there is every time Keptn has this evaluation stage, there's a core component in Keptn that we call the Lighthouse Service. The Lighthouse Service is driven by your SLOs. So you can define SLOs in YAML that you store and in the config repo that Keptn holds for you. I mean, for every Keptn automation project, there's a Git repo. So you put in your SLO where you specify what are the SLIs, what are the metrics, like you can see here, error rate, JVM, memory, count, number of database calls, and what your objectives are. But Keptn itself is not, or the Lighthouse Service doesn't do anything with this yet, because the first thing it does through the same eventing mechanism, it's reaching out to your observability tools and is asking them to query the individual value, because in the SLO, we have a separation of concerns here. The SLO just says error rate. How that error rate is captured depends, well, obviously, on the observability platform. So for Prometheus, you would specify an SLI YAML with your PromQL. For Dynatrace, it would be our Dynatrace metrics expression language. And so that means that we call it the SLI provider, reaches out to the observability platform, pulls in the data, pushes it back to the Lighthouse, and then the Lighthouse compares the values that come back against the criteria. We are evaluating then every single metric, every single SLO, and then on the very top, we calculate a total score between 0 and 100. And then this is then the deciding factor on green, yellow, or red that then decides how the automation process goes on. So this was kind of all of the slides that I wanted to show, but hopefully this gave a little bit of an overview of what Keptn is and why these SLIs and SLOs are so core to Keptn.
Yeah, I think, anyone who, if you have a question, go ahead, feel it, drop it in here. I think out of the three of us, I think I'm the most ignorant one, because my background's mainly in operations, right? And so I've the importance of data-driven deployments, right, I think is what Keptn is trying to focus on. And so, and actually, we just got a question here from Rockhound. So Rockhound, welcome. A CICD wrapper of all other solutions, question mark, with a test dependency at the end. Is that what...
I guess I did a crappy job in explaining what Keptn is, because if the first thing that comes to mind is it's yet another CI/CD tool wrapper, then I really may have missed the point. Keptn is not another CI/CD tool. What Keptn is, it is helping you to orchestrate the tools along what we call a sequence, an automation sequence. And yes, obviously, we always bring the example of pushing artifacts through a delivery process, because that's why I have to deploy, test, and validate here. But the other big use case is for handling problems in production. So if your Prometheus raises an alert, if you get a Prometheus alert that something is wrong, then you can also orchestrate auto remediation tasks, where you can say, I first want to notify my SRE team that there's a situation going on. In the same step, then looking up a list of sequences that should be orchestrated, kind of like your run book, based on the problem that comes in. And then Keptn is then triggering your individual tools. And now the thing is, I really have a hard time with the word wrapper, because what we are doing here, we have, it's an event-driven system. That means there's no hard-coded tool integration that you build where you say, in my particular project, I want to call Jenkins, or I want to call Helm to deploy, or I want to make a notification call to Slack. It's all through event subscriptions, and maybe that's actually another good point.
I would like to think of it as so, and this may be a really simplistic view from my point of view. I really like to think about it as almost like an event bus, right? So exactly. there's certain events that happen, right, and you want certain things to happen based on those events. Exactly. It's just so happen it's just sitting, I guess at the heart of your deployment.
If I think the powerful thing here is that there's essentially a rules engine, right? So exactly. It's not just that there is the messaging and the events going through, which is super important, but that you also have a rules engine. So that is the power, in my opinion, here.
Exactly. I think that's the power, and the other power is there's simply it's loosely coupled. Like what did we do with all the monoliths that we broke into smaller pieces? We in the end, we stitched them together through an event bus. That also has a rule engine. You typically have like your business process management, where you then say, I know exactly what needs to happen, but you can always replace individual pieces because you just subscribe another tool to handle a certain piece of activity. And that's the same thing what we do here. Right? If you look at, I have a multi-stage sequence here. It starts in staging and then in production. And what you see here is, I call it delivery here. This is the delivery sequence. And I have multiple tasks. Monaco stands for monitoring as code. This is where I basically say, I want, before I do anything, make sure that my monitoring system is configured. Now, in my case, maybe for my project, I use Datadog. So I have Datadog subscribed to the Monaco event. Or I have another tool, let's say Dynatrace, that subscribes for it and then does the configuration. Or it's Prometheus, right? I mean, basically, you can, through event subscription, say which tool should handle which type of task for which particular project and which particular stage. And the events that are sent here, so you can see the little icon here, and I'm just pushing on the deployment. This is the events that we're standardizing. So this is not just yet another proprietary, let's say, protocol that we're introducing here, but we're really working with the community to standardize this, because the challenge that we have seen is that every tool out there, whether it's deployment, test, observability tools, notification, everyone has their proprietary API. This is also why it is so hard to build and maintain integrations between all the different point tools. And we have introduced, or we're introducing here, a standard way of how these tools communicate. And with this, we want to take away the pain.
Yeah, it's like a for me, my world is Argo, right? So like if you have Argo, right, and then you have information coming from Dynatrace, since you guys are on, right? Like I have like the Dynatrace, feeding those metrics to me. Like, how do I make Argo speak Dynatrace, and how do I, and like instead of writing that integration, right, there's like an event bus that I can basically loosely couple, what my deployment mechanism is. I guess decoupled from the information, the metrics that I'm receiving.
You're totally right. So there is a standard technology called Cloud Events, which is exactly designed for delivering various kinds of events. And what you see here, Keptn and many other tools actually built on the top of it as producers or receivers of events. There are many standards like CD events, which was referenced before by Andy, which actually extend this cloud event specification and allow to standardize particular areas. But ultimately, it's a universal way of data inter-exchange, which is extensible. And if tools know how to speak to each other, it unlocks a lot of possibilities for your systems. Because as we build modern applications as microservices, the same for delivery and operation services, we also build them as microservices loosely connected with each other through events. And this actually communication layer enables us to build that efficiently and to use many building blocks like Keptn to assemble into an operation system you need for your applications.
Exactly.
Yeah, I wonder. So you're saying you can also use this information for rollback, right?
Exactly.
So like if I guess you're monitoring your system, the information is coming that this latest deployment broke something that for whatever reason, and this will make Hillary cringe, passed passed QA for whatever reason, so like something in production is breaking, you can have those same rule set, I guess. Hillary, I think you said that. I think the best way to say that is you have this rule engine that can then roll it back to a previous version.
So exactly. So the way maybe, and I also see some comments like, is this just another if then do that kind of tool for CloudOps? I guess I still need to do a better job in explaining. It's not just if then else. So maybe let's have a quick look behind the scenes so that people understand what behavior. Behind every automation project is everything starts in the beginning with what we call a shipyard file. The shipyard is really now this definition of the process. What you see here is we are grouping, or you can define so-called automation sequences, like I have my delivery sequence for my staging environment, and here you specify your tasks. Monaco, monitoring as code, deployment, evaluation. We can have different tasks in a stage, like here is a delivery sequence that also does an additional test, or here's just a delivery with test. And what we also have here is in production, I have another delivery process where I say I want to trigger that delivery in case staging finished successfully or staging delivery with test finished successfully. Now I can also go down here, coming to the rollback. What you're basically doing is you are specifying sequences and you connect them together. So a little bit like if then else, of course, from a sequence perspective. However, the magic, what I see here is you don't see any tool. I don't care here in the definition of the process who is doing the rollback, because I maybe that defines that process doesn't know what's the target tool in my environment. And this is now where the event subscription comes in. So if I go back to my Keptn UI, we call this the bridge. And if I go here on the left side to our settings, then we have what we call the uniform. The uniform is kind of like all of the tools that Keptn has to steer the ship. And this is exactly where all this event subscription comes in. So for instance, I have my Helm service here. I could also have here my Argo service, my JMeter service, my Jenkins service. And basically I say, hey, I am now subscribing Helm, in my case, to certain events for a certain project, stage, and service. That means I can control here through event subscription to which tool this event should actually be forwarded and then handled. And this allows me, I think this is the nice decoupling between process and tooling. I can easily switch tools as long as these tools obviously understand the event. And I can also subscribe multiple tools to the same event. Now, why would I want to do this? Well, because maybe I want to push notifications to a Slack channel every time a deployment failed or a rollback is triggered, but the rollback itself is obviously done by another tool. And so I can have multiple subscription to an event, and I can easily switch tools, because in the end, I just need to make sure that I have tools to fulfill the process. And hopefully this explains it a little better. And you tell me if I did a better job.
Well, I think you're doing a great job. Also, Oleg has been feeding me links. So for those that are following in chat, I've been posting some of these links to find out, more of the information, more about these definitions here. So Oleg, he doesn't. He was going to sign up for a Twitch account, but I'm kind of feeding that. He said maybe next time. Next time you'll come with your Twitch account.
Yeah, you just don't want to see my Twitch account.
Yeah. So there you go. Yeah. Well.
Yeah, and
maybe we'll rate it. Maybe we'll rate it afterwards. We don't know.
Yeah, Christian mentioned the uniform. Actually, it's a fun fact about Keptn that we have a lot of special terminology comes from nautical terms. Mm-hmm. So from shipyard to Keptn itself, uniform. This web UI you can see on the screen, it's called Keptn Bridge. And there is a lot of terms like that. So there is internal lore in Keptn community.
I love that. I was actually wondering if you were going to mention, and Andy, I was wondering if you were going to mention sending notifications to Slack channels and so forth, because ChatOps was going to be one of my questions. Mm-hmm. And for those not in the know, ChatOps is sort of an idea of that when something happens, you get a chat message that you can interact with via Slack, and you can actually the power is so much so that even from my phone Slack application, I can see that ChatOps come in and do things like run a playbook based on the alert, and that sometimes can be multiple options depending on various certain pieces of data. So that was going to be my question.
Exactly. So that's basically, I'm pretty sure actually you can find Keptn Slack webhook.
I pasted the link to the chat.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah. I mean, whatever favorite search engine you have, it's typically pretty easy to find all of your different integrations that we have and how we work. There's also a lot of like Jenkins is another example. Obviously, Oleg been very active in the Jenkins community. Everybody knows him there. How we can subscribe to Keptn, how to Jenkins and send the information over. But essentially, I'm not sure if maybe it was a little too fast, but in Keptn, on the integrations in the uniform, one of the things we can do is we have a webhook service where you can select for which task you want to call an external webhook. And every task has 3 stages. Triggered is when Keptn says, I need this task to be executed. Who wants to do it? And then the tool that is actively doing it will then send back when it's starting the job and when it's finished. But I can also subscribe as a notification tool, perfect, right? If, let's say, the evaluation finished, then I want to make a call to the Slack API. And obviously, we have secrets here, right? We can configure secrets, like your token you would obviously put into a secret. Here you can define your custom payload, and then you can pick any of the data elements that are in these cloud events that we've shown you earlier. That means you can obviously reference, right, the dashboard link, or you can reference that was used for the SLO evaluation. You can also reference the evaluation result, the Git commit, the indicator result, the total score, and then you just push this over to whatever tool you want.
And so I want to touch on something else that you mentioned. I have so many like things I want to touch on here. I think this is such a neat thing.
Yeah, this is your favorite subject. So
right,
it's you're like, this is amazing. Yeah.
I feel like I feel very much with kindred spirits right now. Especially with all the joint QE background, like that's amazing. But anyhow, so there's something you mentioned, and I wanted to ask a little bit more about it. So to my mind, as I'm evaluating this, it looks like this technology is really, I guess I'll use the term, it's non-linear, right? You don't have to just have like one set of things happening. You can actually start spreading out through a branch of things, which is neat. And I'm wondering kind of if you have any examples of that, if you have any strategies for doing that in a maintainable way, because the problem with making things spread out too far is, of course, losing track of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So from a spreading out perspective, what we can do, and I go back to my actually, let me give you another example here. The demo rollout example. That's using Argo rollouts here for Canary deployments. What you see here basically is not a spread out, but kind of like a sequence of sequences. So I start in staging, and I am delivering a new version just in a regular blue-green deployment using Helm and Argo rollouts to actually push it out like a blue-green deployment. When everything is passed at the end, so tests are being executed. I think in this case I'm using Locust. You can see here another thing, right, where the testing tool is kicking it off and running tests. Then we do the evaluation. Then I'm going over when everything is green to production. And here what I've specified is a delivery sequence that is then followed by a Canary rollout phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. And this is, if you remember earlier, and let me just show you what the shipyard file behind the scenes, because behind every project there is a Git repository. And in this case, it's the delivery demo. And here's my shipyard file again. So the shipyard file, remember, that's the initial definition. So you can specify, as you mentioned earlier, the sequences, and then the way you connect them and kind of said spreading it out is through the triggered on. The triggered on means if one sequence is done, then you can trigger another sequence. It's not that you can then kind of branch out into multiple areas. It's always like one sequence. What then is what when this is completed, either with a successful status or a failed status, you can then say, are we done, or are we kicking off another sequence depending on the finished results of the previous one? So this is how we do it. We, like what you're meaning is completely branching off. I mean, it's also possible, but I think to this extent where you would say one sequence is done and you're kicking off 50 others, I think this is not where we've gone so far. And I'm also wondering, as you said, this would probably be, I mean, it's doable, right? Because we would then show it here in our UI. We probably need to figure out how to better visualize it, even if it branches out completely. But this is not the way we have seen it being used so far.
No, that makes sense. And I think that's fantastic. You can always count on me to figure out some way to break your tool, right?
Yeah.
I will absolutely use it wrong.
That's an SRE life, right? Like it's
yeah.
like I'll use your tool wrong. This is what it is.
I frequently say that SRE is a type of quality department, right? We're driving continuous improvement through the observation of the production realities. Although I usually, I think, say it better than that, but this is sick and undercaffeinated, so this is what we get today. Right. So I wanted to ask you, because it was a kind of a quick thing, and if there's other questions, I'll cede to the actual audience who we're here to entertain instead of myself. But I wanted to go back to the SLO components. Mm-hmm. And some of those definitions again, just because, like I said, it was just really quick earlier, and I was like, oh, I want to spend more time there.
Yeah. So what you see here is kind of in the end the visualization that we have, right? So this means every time I run a sequence and I have the evaluate step in there, then Keptn will reach out and to the monitoring tool that has subscribed to the give me your SLI values. The values will then be brought back, and then every value, every SLI will be evaluated against the SLO, the objective, and then a total score will be calculated. So this is just a visualization of one of these. You can scroll down here. You can actually see the individual values that came back. One of the cool things that I like is that we can not only compare or specify an objective based on an absolute value. So you can say, I don't know, host disk queue length should obviously be, smaller or equal than 0, because otherwise you have a problem. But you can also combine it like here's a metric called service throughput per minute. You can say, I want the throughput to be smaller than 200, but I also want to combine it that it should not increase by more than 10% to the baseline. And the baseline is then calculated based on previous results. So you can combine absolute objectives with, I call it relative objectives. I'm not sure if there might be a better English term for that, but this is what it is. Now, how can you define all of this? There's two ways how you can define it. Remember what is behind every project? Come on, it's a question for you. What's behind every automation project?
Oh, I don't know. YAML, JSON, code, infrastructure code. Like I've got a long list. I'm not sure what leading question you're trying to ask.
A Git repository. So all of the Git repository, all of the actual configuration, because so far we only looked at the shipyard. All of the configuration then really lives in the Git repository. That means I have my shipyard here, but then depending on how many stages you specify, so per stage, we allow you to then put in all of your configuration files, either your Helm charts, if you want to use Helm for deployment. I had Locust earlier, so I would put in my Locust test scripts here, or my SLOs would also be here. So for instance, this is one of the samples that I run. I have my service called TNT AAPL service. Just quickly go back here, right? In this project, I'm currently in my service called TNT AAPL service. The way we're structured is project stages, and then you have services where you can execute automation on. This is why in my Git repository, in the production stage, I have a subfolder called TNT AAPL SVC, and here are all the relevant config files if I want to run automation for this particular service in this stage in this project. So for instance, here is my SLO file. And in the SLO file, you exactly have this configuration that you've seen earlier in the UI. So YAML, where you specify as an SLI with a unique name, SVC RTP95. Can also have a display name so that it actually looks nicer in the UI and not just using this acronym. So you can say service response time 95th percentile. But here's the thing. You can specify pass and warning criteria. We also allow you to change the weight. By default, every SLI, and I have multiple here, by default, it has the same weight to the total score, but you can change it. You can say this one here should have a weight of 5 because it's 5 times more important. You can also specify if individual SLIs should be a key SLI, meaning if this one fails, the whole evaluation should fail. A good example would be if failure rate is higher than 1%, right? I don't care how fast it is, then it should be considered as a failed evaluation overall. So that means you can change the weight, you can change and mark one as key, and you can specify pass and warning criteria. Now the question is, what is behind this here? What is behind SVC RTP95? Well, that is in a different file because it depends. In my case, I use Dynatrace. I could also use Prometheus or Datadog and New Relic, but in my case, I use Dynatrace. Therefore, I know when Dynatrace kicks in my integration, it looks in the Dynatrace folder, and in here, I have my SLI YAML definition. And this now defines the actual query behind the scenes to query a particular piece of data.
Okay. So so again, I'm coming from this I'm just a sysadmin. Just think I'm just a sysadmin trying to understand this. The payload is where the payload is generated doesn't necessarily matter, right? It's like where the information that you get it from and how you basically you're just basically passing that payload from tool to tool. to make
Exactly.
informed decisions, right?
Exactly. And the thing is, and not only that, that's what we're doing in general. The orchestration of Keptn is we are triggering a task. And in the end, in the beginning, the Keptn doesn't care who is doing the task. We just know here's a task that should be carried out. And whichever tool is subscribed to do this task, here's all the information you need to know. On the one side, there's information. And if I go, let's say, again, to the deployment, there's information in the deployment event that says, hey, I need deployment triggered. So the task is deployment. I want to trigger it. This is now part of the project delivery demo. This is for this particular service. This is for this particular stage. By the way, I have some additional information for you. This is the artifact that should be deployed. So whoever can do a deployment, this is all the information that I give you. Now, additionally, in my case, the Helm service is subscribing. So Helm then says, hey, I want to do it. So it says, I'm starting the task. So Keptn can keep track of, what's going on right now. Additionally, however, every service we integrate here also knows that behind every project, there's a Git repository. And in that Git repository, you have additional config files that might be there for this particular tool. So I'm going to the delivery demo project now. If I go to staging, then I have my sample projects here, my sample services like TNT APL service. And now I see here I have my Helm subdirectory. So this is now where all of my Helm charts live. And that means this particular point tool can then get the configuration file, for instance, from here. So it's a separation of process and tooling, and the configuration that a certain tool needs is also fully version controlled in a Git repository that is organized based on the way you run your automation.
I love this so much.
I like that you're using Git T as well. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I just use Git for my demos, because obviously you can specify any upstream Git. I mean, you can
mirror.
Yeah, but we call this Keptn in a box. So we have some of our tutorials where you just run and install, right? I mean, this here, it just all runs actually in my case on my I have a case 3S here, right? And then so Keptn itself is a container-based event-driven solution, and it runs on Kubernetes. So when you install Keptn initially, you install what we call the control plane. So that's kind of the core of Keptn, the orchestration engine, right? So for instance, what do we have here? We have the shipyard controller that is responsible to actually control the workflow that is specified in your shipyard. We have certain out-of-the-box services like the Lighthouse service. Remember, the Lighthouse is the one that is then evaluating all the results. We have the webhook service. We have the secret. I mean, you see all of this stuff, right? And then in my case, everything is on one machine. So I also have installed some specific integrations we have, like the Locust service to execute Locust tests, the Dynatrace, the Helm service. We have a job executor where you can just let Keptn deploy a container as a Kubernetes job to do a certain task and then wait until the job is done, similar to a GitHub action. So this is all there. But the nice thing for me is I don't need to care about how do I call a particular tool and wait until it comes back with a result. We've automated all of this for you. The only thing you need to do is you specify the process and you subscribe your tools to those events. And that's it.
So we got an interesting question here from Rockhound. Says, can I define an RBAC to which steps are available for which repo, commit, user, for example, or how do I limit that?
I think Keptn RBAC and probably Oleg, you probably know even more than I do about the status.
Yes, so there is an enhancement proposal for Keptn, Cap 60, one Andy screen shares. So basically it addresses user authentication and authorization. Currently, Keptn started as a developer tool where the basic approach was just to isolate it through network, and inside, once you get access, you would have full access to, in principle, like an InfluxDB works and many other projects. Now, with Keptn growth, of course, there is interest to have user model inside. And the current state that we have user authentication, so through OpenID Connect, etc., you can authentify users. but the permission model is not fully integrated inside. So what you have now, you have RBAC for services. So for example, you have a service which needs specific permissions like Dynatrace integration service, or let's say Gmeter integration service for performance tests. And these services can run with special permissions. So on an infrastructure level, you have some model and some isolation, but not on the user level. It's coming soon, maybe in well, I would expect the preview in 3 months or so, but then it will take some time before all of this permission model stabilizes. We close all the gaps because it's a long story. So maybe 6 to 9 months, and we will have user authorization support.
Awesome. I actually threw that in the chat. So for those of you following the chat, I've been throwing the links in there as they come. So check that out. Sorry to cut you off, Hillary, but there was a question that came up, so I didn't want to miss the question.
That's exactly what I was going to bring up, was that question.
Oh, okay, perfect.
You were just faster.
All right, gotcha. I've been doing it for a little longer, so I'm on autopilot. So
yeah. And isn't there one more? I think there's one that talks about, and you don't have to write any of the integrations. I think this is something, don't you have to write the integration like programming?
Well, Rockhound also said the great thing is that all event-driven based product, that it's all event-based driven products. So it just doesn't care. You can just do anything as an event.
Exactly. The only thing, obviously, you need to, like, for instance, and this is the reason why we have, let's say, a Dynatrace service here or a low-cost service. We are sending events. You can subscribe to events. You will receive those events. But there are certain tools that might not be, that they don't have the capability, right? So we give you a couple of options. The first option is if your tool that you want to integrate has an API that we can call through a webhook, then you can use our built-in webhook service. And that, just as I showed earlier, you can subscribe here to an event, and you can say, hey, you know what? I want, whenever a test is triggered, in my, let's say, staging stage, I want to make a call to my testing tool, and here's an API, and it reports back when it's done. So that's one option. If you have a tool they want to integrate and it doesn't support the subscribing to the cloud events, we haven't understands it natively, this is one option. The second option is we have the so-called job executor service. That's the one I mentioned earlier. The job executor service.
I was going to ask about that. Is that like a job for like a Kubernetes job?
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
Not Dynatrace, sorry. Keptn.
Because I was going to say that would be my catch-all. Where I'd be like, if I can just create a Kubernetes job, like I can wire anything.
That's exactly.
So that's it's exactly silver bullet of automation. So Keptn itself is orchestration engine, but if you're sure you need automation, you have an option for that.
Yeah. And then here you can say, right, again, through a config file you put in the Git repository that, again, behind every project, there's a Git repository. And then you put in a job.config.yaml file. And here you can say, if this event comes in, then please run this particular image as a job. And there's obviously more options here. You can pass in all the parameters and stuff. But this is the second option. So the first one is webhook. The second is through this. And the third one is, and you still have the option, you can also write and develop, if you want to, a custom, what we call Keptn service. Like these Keptn services, they are basically just containers that you just deploy, like I have here, right? Deployments is a pods, like I have a low-cost service actually here. So this is nothing else than a container that has a sidecar container, which is called the so-called distributor. This is a component that we actually deliver. And that distributor is actively registering itself to Keptn, saying, hey, I'm here. I can handle the test events. And then every time a test event comes in, then it just forwards it to that container that sits in that same pod and just calls a particular endpoint. So we have a couple of options. We call them Keptn services. And I believe if I use my Keptn,
your Google foo.
Yeah, if I can Google correctly, then let's go to the doc.
I've commented several times that my real skill, my actual life skill, is my ability to navigate a search engine. That's really what I'm good at.
Exactly. So write a Keptn service. Here we go. Right. This is how you could do your own. We also have templates. We have a Go template. I think we have a Python template. And And that's exactly, let me, no, Oleg is probably already on it, but now maybe I'm faster than Oleg and I'm posting this into the
Oh, there we
chat
go.
here.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You got it. You won.
We do have a question from Rockhound again. Thank you, Rockhound. So trying to remember the exact context of the timing when he asked this question, he or she asked this question. So are those events queued with AMQP, for example, or do you limit the maximum amounts of executors on the global level?
Yeah, so what we internally, I mean, that might be too much of technical detail, but we're using nets internally. So the shipyard controller, remember the shipyard controller is the controlling instance that is always aware of in which state is my current sequence. And then it sends out the appropriate event. So for instance, when a new sequence is triggered, like a delivery sequence, it knows based on the shipyard file, the first thing is it needs to send out a Monaco.triggered. So it sends that out, and then everybody that subscribes to it will receive that event. And then the shipyard controller waits until it hears back from at least one service that says, I can do it. And then also the shipyard controller waits until all of the tools that have said, I'm doing something actively, also finished with a pass or a fail result. And then the shipyard controller takes over. So the shipyard controller really manages everything. And in terms of limitations, I don't think there's any limits on maximum. There's no limits on maximum number of executors. Yeah, at least not from an architectural perspective. No.
As long as your cluster can handle that, it's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
And one important thing to mention is that Keptn itself, it has control plane, but its execution planes can be actually located on remote Kubernetes clusters. So, for example, if you need to have to run heavy payloads, one of the base examples is load testing as a quality gate, which was one of the first use cases for Keptn. So with Gmeter and with other services, now there is K6 integration. And you can basically offload this heavy execution to another Kubernetes cluster, and Keptn can just manage it for you as external execution plane. So it also increases scalability of Keptn as a system.
Yep.
That actually kind of anticipates one of my questions, which was actually about to be scalability here. So I guess, knowing that it can, have a singular control plane executing across multiple, execution planes. I guess the real question I have is sort of like multi-tenancy in this model. For example, Red Hat is a huge org, and we have a lot of, we'll call them cohabitating engineering teams who might not necessarily want to see everybody's pieces, but would want to use the same tool. So, I was going to ask about multi-tenancy and scaling to accommodate significant numbers of teams.
So there is ongoing. Go ahead, Andy.
Go ahead.
Okay, Keptn initially started rather as a developer tool, where the approach was that you have multiple Keptn instances for relatively small setups. But now it changed, and control plane evolved significantly. So now, for example, there is an ongoing job to have a control plane infinitely scalable, also with features like high availability, zero-time upgrades, etc. So basically, control plane is being redesigned now to support not only scalability and high availability, but also support for basically non-stop operations, even if you need to update Keptn. So this is just ongoing work, bits landing incrementally. So there were some changes in the recent 0.14 release, with some regressions, which are fixed by now. But this is one of key highlights of this year's development, is actually having control plane fully scalable and fully cloud native when it comes to terms of a single system. So you should be able to scale Keptn much more than it was possible before.
And then also, I think to add to this, kind of if you really have multiple different teams that all want to use Keptn, they don't want to see the other stuff or are not allowed to, then two answers. Right now, you would have multiple Keptn instances. You can obviously run multiple Keptn instances also on one I think there was one question in OCP. We would need multiple instances, so you can run multiple Keptn control planes also for that type of separation. And with role-based access with RBAC, I mean, these are all things that are on the roadmap. So you can have Team A logging in and only see their stuff, and Team B only seeing their stuff. But this is something that we're working on. Yeah.
Also, there are some quality of life improvements. So you have seen uniform UI with a lot of configuration there, but obviously everything can be configured as code. And right now there is ongoing work to have official GitOps operators. Well, we have prototypes available for preview. But you will be able to manage Keptn fully, not just as code, but in models like GitOps, so that you can share multiple instances, configurations between teams, to apply templates, and also roll out upgrades incrementally, as we mentioned, with zero-time upgrades, just by having a number of repositories for your teams.
Awesome. And we what's funny is I can actually read that. So the yeah, I'll put this in the chat here.
Yeah, that was one of the videos, and there's one of the Keptn tutorials we recently did. How to GitOps with Keptn.
What's really what I always tell people too is that, like, if you're a Yidokanda, yeah, okay. So the you know, like what you're doing with RBAC, right? So now is like your ultimate flexibility, right? Like if you want to leverage like RBAC and have like a traditional like workflow, or like do something like GitOps where like all the interactions happening in Git, so like you actually almost just only focus how your Git is RBAC, or your groups, or your permissioning, or your pull requests, right? Like it's totally flexible, right? So like if you're going to do the GitOps way, hey, just use whatever organization, you know, like if you're in GitHub, right? Like just use that model. Or like if you want a more traditional sense, you know, take a look at that that PR there. I think it's a standing PR for now, for Keptn to support RBAC. So here, checking here to see if yeah, someone asked. So this is a good question about, and probably one of the last questions here, because we're almost at time, and I unfortunately have another meeting to go to. So someone's asking about OpenShift operator integration. So that'd be interesting kind of thing to write about having operator integration with OpenShift. So not sure if there's a PR for that already or an issue, but that
have you Googled it?
That would be really cool. So that's right. Yeah. Like, what is the Google foo on that?
Yeah. No, I mean, that's the GitOps operator that falls into the whole thing, what we just mentioned earlier.
Awesome.
How to GitOps with Keptn, that's all operator based. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So yeah, so we're almost at time. We're just about at time. So again, oh, look at that. Andy already had the link handy for you. So yeah, so again, everyone, thank you for joining. Andy, thank you for joining. Oleg, thank you for joining. It's been great. Hillary, congratulations, your first show, your first official stream here. You know, again, excited to have you here. So yeah, so any last words from Andy or Oleg? Where to find
there is a second question about Keptn at KubeCon. And yes, we are going to KubeCon. So you can meet us today. We will have a project kiosk. We will also have happy hour on May 17th with some special agendas. Stay tuned for announcements. Subscribe to Keptn Twitter. You won't regret it. And also on May 17th, there is CD Events Day, which is a conference again about events in CD, etc. And Keptn will be actively participating there. So see you there.
I'll put that. So I'll put the Twitter link there for the Keptn project. So cool, awesome. So I'll see you at KubeCon. So I'll be there as well.
So will I. You say that like you're going without me. We're going together. We're
Oh,
talking
that's
together.
right. My co-presenter. So Hillary will also be there. We'll all be there, all four of us. So if we'll all four of us be there, so catch us there. So awesome. So Hillary, any last words? But what do you think about your first stream? Love it, hate it?
No, this was great. This is going to be hard to top in terms of favorite streams. I say that now, that could change, but yeah, this was a great topic, and I really enjoyed it. And thank you guys so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you again.
You can say it was the best stream so far for you because it's the first. So right,
because it's the first.
You'll never any regret. Yeah.
You never forget your first, I guess. So again, thank you everyone. Thank you for joining. Thank you guys. And we'll see you next time. I forget what's coming up. Just look for Twitter. We'll have an agenda out. So yeah, again, everyone, thank you for joining. And like I always say, unless it's in Git, it's only a rumor. So goodbye, everyone. Cheers. Thank you for joining.
Bye. Thanks.